Welcome. I'm Daryl Ogden. For the last decade plus, I've had the pleasure of working with some of the most successful leaders in the video game industry. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Guillaume Provost, the founder of Compulsion Games. Compulsion is the maker of the games Contrast and We Happy Few, and this year we'll be releasing a game called South of Midnight. Compulsion was acquired by Microsoft and Xbox in 2019. Guillaume, it's great to be with you today.
It's always great to be with you, Daryl.
Absolutely. So, Guillaume, one of the things I love when I speak with leaders like you, I love to find out about how they started in the video game industry. But you and I know each other well, and I know that there's actually a story that far, predates your entry into the games industry that was really formative for you. And I think it really began with the road trip with your mother.
Sure.
And that's going way back. So I wonder if you could tell us about that experience and what it meant to who you were and who you became.
Yes. I mean, that would have been before I started school.
Yeah.
At the time, my parents were very different individuals. Like, they separated when I was about one. And I lived with my mother most of the time. My father was an entrepreneur. He was someone who was very disciplined. I learned a lot of my work ethic from him. And he was a very intellectual person. My mother is a bit of a hipster. And I learned a lot of my emotional intelligence from her. And we were a Francophone family. I didn't really speak any English. And
This was in Quebec.
In Quebec, yeah. And we're in the French portion of Canada. And my mother decided that we were going to go on a road trip when I was just short of, I think, turning 4 at the time. And we spent a year milling from state to state. So we did a big U all around of the United States. We spent some time in Tennessee and the Carolinas, going all the way down to Texas, and then coming back up from California. And my mom would stop at certain spots and work different various jobs. Like she worked as a nurse, as a barmaid. We sometimes slept in the car, but we had all our stuff like piled up on top of the car, which may not sound like the most responsible thing in today's world, but in 1981, that was kind of maybe a more adventurous kind of spirited thing to do. I have only great memories of that trip, and it's also where I was able to learn English. Right, I was able to get like immersed in various cultural moments inside the different states that we visited, and gave me a basis for and a love for traveling, a love for adventure, and something that stayed with me, I think, for the rest of my life.
So one of the things that I love when I talk with game leaders is I love to find out their stories into gaming, because especially these origin stories are so different from one another, because there wasn't traditionally a kind of conventional path into games. People loved games, they loved to be part of the industry, and they had to figure out a way to get into it. So what was your path into games? How did that happen for you?
Well, I played a lot of games. Like I think most people who end up working in games, that's a common piece. I really wanted to work in video games, but in Montreal at the time, we're talking about the early to mid 90s, there wasn't really any studios in Montreal. There was no gaming studio in Montreal. Most of the game development scene was in Dallas and San Francisco, for example, and some of it in Vancouver. So I remember applying at a number of game studios in the United States, but just kind of being politely told that I didn't have a degree, so it was going to be really hard to kind of get me to immigrate to a different country as a result of it. So I really started my programming career in the banking field. So I wrote cryptography and kind of low-level kernels for machines that were used inside the banking industry space. And I used all of my hobby time to make these things called demos, which was these kind of small real-time movies that we would go and compete on. And so I had some brushes. I think when I was 19, I tried to start a studio in Lac-Saint-Jean. A guy came by in Montreal and basically pitched me, we're going to start a game company. And do you want to come to Lac-Saint-Jean and start a game company with me? And I wanted it so badly, I didn't do any due diligence on whether this was feasible or whether we knew what we were working on. And I left my job and I put all my books, because we were using books at the time. This is pre-internet phase of finding information. So I put all my books and my clothes in a big backpack. And I took the bus because I didn't drive. So I took the bus to Lac-Saint-Jean, which is about like a 7-hour journey. And I remember on my first day, I walk into like this little kind of studio space that he'd set up with me and 2 other animators that he had hired. And he sits me down on the first day and says, Guillaume, he says, so I have all the plan. We've decided what we want to do. And the animators have like made this movie. Like they've made this 30-minute sequence of a movie in soft image in order to, explain and understand like what the game's going to be. And so now your job is to take the movie and make a game with it. It was definitely not a venture that was going to go anywhere, but I learned a lot in just those first 9 or 10 months that I spent there. And it convinced me that I really wanted to pursue a career somehow in video games.
It did not deter you.
It did not deter me. No, on the contrary, it was clear that I didn't care if I was getting paid. I didn't care. This is the stuff I wanted to be doing. This is the stuff I was really passionate about.
So you kick around, you're kind of in between things and so on. Let's talk about the creation of Compulsion.
I'd say the genesis of Compulsion, interestingly, isn't like this perfected goal of me having a plan to start a studio.
No, far from it.
Yeah.
So you start Compulsion. I think that as I understand it, you were 3 to begin with. Is that right? 3 people, or was really you were 1?
It was just me.
It was you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and then you acquired a small group of partners. I think Whitney, you're still your art director and one of your co-founders essentially, and a third person, right, who's no longer with the company. Is that right? But you were 3 to start with, or did you start already working as Compulsion as a singleton? Like, were you by yourself?
I really started as a singleton. I sat
as a co-development singleton. Like
yes.
You were.
Yeah. Basically, I sat down on a coffee table. I went to Corporations Canada and I incorporated 7168799 Canada Inc. That was the original legal name for Compulsion.
Catchy. I love it. Yeah.
Well, basically, it's like 2-3 clicks, and then you pay $200 and you build a company. And really just started at the beginning was just feed the family, right? Like it wasn't that feed the family, having my background project that I have that I want to do in the back of my head. So I started, I think the first contract I did was to write the little AI that makes the little characters move around on a wedding dash for the Nintendo DS, which is like Diner Dash but with weddings. To this day, I think it was the most popular game project I worked on for my daughters at the time because they thought it was cool.
They loved it.
That was working on that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first year was, I'd say the first year of the studio, a little bit less than the first year of the studio, was just me trying to get in a situation where there's not a lot of money in the system, was trying to get contracts to actually just utilize my programming skill to just get some money into the company.
Right.
And then I started working with a company in Toronto, whom I had known from my time being in Toronto because I was very involved with the community in Toronto over the years. And they pitched me to take over more than just programming because I'm trying to build a team, right? So if I'm just doing programming all the time, like I wanted to try to get contracts that had a little bit more responsibility, so I could start hiring people from different disciplines to come help me. And so I think that's the first. That's how I got to hire Whitney originally is to make some of the UI for one of the Dungeons and Dragons games that we were working on with Atari at the time. And then the team slowly formed around a lot of the service work that we would do. So first 2 years of the studio, we were just trying to do service work. I was able to make a lot of money on the programming contract. So I just remember at one point was able to kind of kickstart Contrast really in earnest by being the only one not working on it because I would basically work on the programming for some other company, and then I would take my salary and I would divide my salary into 5 between all the different team members at the time. Yeah. And that's kind of how we got kickstarted until until we had our first angel. So we had a first angel, which was one of the original Taiwanese investors.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Came back into the
came
picture.
back into the fold and became an angel and would become really like the right term is angel would come back multiple times in the company's history to kind of help shore us in tough times.
Yeah.
And then from an angel, we applied in the first round of the Canadian Media Fund. That gave us an extra chunk of money, and that was the point where I was like, okay, I have about a quarter of the budget I needed to actually make the game at that point in time. And I needed to make a decision of like, well, we have this money that's coming in from the service work, but like we're never going to do this game. We're never going to make this IP if we keep being split in between, trying to make sure money's coming in. So I had a meeting with my team at the time. I said, like, we all want to do this thing is make this game Contrast. But we've got the safety net. And I told them, I think we need to jump off a cliff. We need to jump off a cliff and just go and actually all in and stop doing any kind of service work on this IP, and take the risk that mean that we don't have a job on the other side.
Right.
Because the alternate future I see is we're just going to get sucked into like sucked in is not the right term.
Yeah.
I used to call it brain prostitution, but
Seduced.
Yeah.
Seduced.
No, but like just become too dependent on like the revenue streams.
Yeah.
And never actually accomplish what it is that we started this team for originally.
Right. So this is a moment where you're looking down at the water over the cliff and you say, are we going to jump in or not? And you said, we're jumping in. Right. Unfortunately, the tide was coming in instead of going out when you landed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's definitely a good. But I also did it with with a discussion with my team. I didn't drag my team over the cliff. We sat down together and said, this is really what we want to do, and this is where we think there's.
You joined hands and said, we're going to do this together.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. And how big was the team at that point?
4, 5, 4.
So there were 8 hands.
It's not a lot of hands. Not a lot of hands. Yeah, no, and Whitney, she had one obviously very creative and artistic mind. She's behind the artistic direction in all of
which is
games.
Extraordinary, is absolutely extraordinary. Yeah.
But also someone who was always kind of really laid back with regards to these risks. She, if I felt stressed out, she'd always be the person who'd just tell me, "Yeah, it's all gonna be fine." There's that Vermont attitude of like that. Just she constantly.
Feet on the ground kind of thing.
Feet on the ground, very confident about like us, just making something special and being on the same page. So it was that collaboration has been really, really incredible for me over the years.
Any independent founder that I work with or talk to, they're always endlessly interested in acquisition stories. What is the acquisition story? So there's an acquisition story, of course, that happens with Compulsion. And again, I think I know a little bit about this story already, but it's one where, again, you were surprised and continually astonished. As you say, it was a continuation of your astonishment. But I wonder if you could share maybe the way that unfolded and your, your curiosity to know more. Yeah.
Sure.
So you got a phone call, I think.
I got a message over Facebook Messenger.
That you must have been very suspicious about.
Well, it's a Tuesday night. I think it's 11 p.m. Yeah. This is someone I know fairly well. Like I'd interfaced with him quite a bit when he was at Microsoft, Noah. And it was just a quick poke over Facebook originally to ask me like, hey, do you have a couple minutes to chat? And I remember looking at my watch and going like, it's 8 p.m. in Seattle. It's unusual for Noah. It's very unusual for Noah to be bothering me at that time. So my first thought is someone we know in common must have passed away.
Oh no!
It's some kind of dramatic event that requires him to reach out outside of like what would have been the normal core hours for us to communicate. And so I said, of course, I took the call. You always take the call when Microsoft calls when you're an independent.
Yes.
And yeah, he just put it pretty simply. He just said, listen, we are in the process of considering acquiring a studio. He didn't reveal that there would be multiple studios at the time. And he just really simply asked, he said, listen, your name's on the blackboard or the board that we've been brainstorming.
Yeah.
And I just want to know do we keep your name on the list or do we take the name off the list? Which is his polite way of asking, like, are you interested in having a discussion?
Right.
Or
going through a diligence of some sort,
So my first reaction was like, okay, well, I mean, I think I'm interested. I've had like 2 glasses of wine. I think maybe this is not the right time for me to kind of, have an extended discussion about it. But But yeah, let's give it a talk, right? Like I didn't shut the door at the time, even though in my head I was like, no fucking way. that was literally my first reaction.
Why was that?
It just there's a
seemed implausible or something or what?
No, it's not because it seemed implausible. There's a feistiness and combativeness to the idea of having been independent for so long. I did my thing. I was still scraping for money like a year earlier. We Happy Few's out in early access. We are being successful in the marketplace. And so I don't need money anymore. I have my independence.
Right. Why didn't you call me a year ago?
Yeah. That would have been would have been the funny comment is I could have sold pennies on the dollar a year ago because I was looking for security. But now we finally, the thing's moving. We're being commercially successful. People are interested in our games. But and I think that the things that really kind of started tilting my opinions is they were building this thing, they were building Game Pass, they were also a platform, and they needed titles and needed companies and studios to have to add more diversity to the content that they were currently producing internally, and they needed some of those titles to really carry like critical reception torches or play roles that were really appealing to what I knew my team wanted to do. So I started to see a different picture after having those discussions because it became clear that the business incentives that Microsoft had for acquiring my studio were really aligned with the creative incentives of the team of wanting to make weird, different story world-building games, but being able to do so with the backing of a large corporation. So I think, in terms of like the conversations that occurred, that was really what kind of started changing my mind because I was like, okay, I think I can sell this to the team if we actually decide to say yes, because the mission sounds really exciting on a creative level and it sounds exciting from a studio culture perspective. So then I started getting interested. The folks at Microsoft tell me, okay, well, it's going to be a little bit of time before we get back to you at this point in time. And so I don't hear anything back for 1 week and then 2 weeks and then 3 weeks. And at that point, I'm kind of losing my mind a little bit because I remember having a phone call and I'm in on the weekend. I'm like, I had text messages up to the folks at Microsoft. It's just like, why did you do this to me? Like, literally, like, this,
I'm on a yo-yo. I'm a yo-yo here.
Well, and also this clearly is not going to happen at this point. Like, we're 2 weeks ahead of E3, right? Like, so I'm like, why did you pull this prank of calling me 7 weeks ago and telling me you might be interested, and then not respond for 3 or 4 weeks, right? Like I was feeling a little bit, and the emotion cycle obviously is very high, right? Because there's a deadline, there's a desire for the Microsoft to make the announce at E3. What I didn't know at the time is before Microsoft can start formal negotiations to buy a company, they also have a process, right? And
imagine that.
They have a process. So yeah, that was there was a moment where Noah called me on a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday. I was pretty much working every day at that point, anyways. To just have a chat with me about it, and I was like, yeah, I was pretty emotional. I'm crying in the parking lot, going like, why are you guys playing with my emotions? If you're serious or you're not serious. And I gave a number to Noah on the phone that day and says, listen, if you want to make a deal, like this is the amount, and if
take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. And then Microsoft formally started negotiations on the Saturday before E3. So that's like about 8 days before the show. So I sat down with the team and I said, we might be selling to Microsoft this weekend. You'll know at the show if we're selling because I haven't signed yet. And
this is a Hollywood movie at this point, isn't it?
But I also made the pitch to them. I said, listen, this is why I think it's a good thing for the studio and for the culture of the team. This is why I think this is going to be a good thing for us to be able to do the type of games and enable us to do the type of games at the level of quality we want to do.
Yeah.
And the team was generally excited by it. But I said, don't get too excited yet because I don't know if we're going to sign yet, right?
Right.
And so I was a bit shell-shocked signing the deal less than 24 hours before the show.
Wow. And so a textbook, very thoughtful, very structured process, right? That was completely predictable.
So that's kind of the interesting thing is it sounds really kind of crazy and wacko and unstructured in when you just describe it from my point of view and experience.
Right.
But deals happen when there's enough excitement for them to happen. And so I think having like that concentrated set of discussions that led up to the deal really did actually contribute in one, I think, creating a sense of excitement in all the teams that were getting acquired.
Yeah.
And in creating that sense of urgency to actually come up to terms, I think was really useful. Yeah. I have one kind of cute story about the announce itself, because obviously we signed on the Saturday, and on the Sunday is the show, right? So we all streamed into the auditorium, and Matt had all the founders that were going to be announced at the show sit next to each other. Lined up.
Yeah.
In the order we were going to be announced by the show.
Right.
And so we were the last studio to get remember in the show. So I was the last on the row, and Ninja was the second last. So I was sitting next to Nina, and I remember Phil gets up on stage, and he's doing the presentations, and then suddenly he starts announcing, the studios getting acquired. And right before it was Nina's turn, I remember Nina just grabbed my hand, right? Like it was like you could clearly see it was a big moment. There's a moment of it was just a moment of you're the culmination of a lot of things throughout our whole career. It comes to this point in time. And the entire world, the entire professional world that you've worked with is watching the show as well at that point in time.
Yes.
And then I watch her phone explode with like every possible social media announcement at the same time. Like it's just like it's one of those, wow, that must be like what Taylor Swift's phone is all
the time. Right. Yeah. Right.
And then they announced us afterwards, and I had a whole a bazillion what the fuck text messages come up on my phone. Right. So
is this real? Is this real? Right.
Yeah, it was this really kind of interesting, but really kind of cute, personal, intimate moment that helped bond all the founders together in a shared experience. That I think we carry to this day. That really helps. And I think that actually was really smart. It also helped. Today when you look at the set of studios, we are as studios closer together because of those.
That's right. Yeah.
Those experiences.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the good fortune of getting to know a lot of you and seeing you be together. Been in events with you and so on, convenings, and there's an esprit de corps that's pretty special about that group. It's almost like you're a class together that joined, kind of graduated together or something, and you went through a common experience. I keep coming back to narrative because, when I remember when we first met, this would have been in 2019 or so, I was getting to know Compulsion a bit and finding out about what kind of games you guys made. And the thing that really stood out to me, in part because of my background, was that you made narrative games. And that narrative games really stood out to you. And so as I've gotten to know you and I got to know more about your biography, there's a narrative about a road trip. But also, I believe when you were a teenager, you were kind of an aspiring short story writer or a fiction writer. Is that right?
Yeah, I had that's it's interesting that I had completely forgotten about that topic. But yes, when I was right before I started working as a programmer, because I started working pretty young as a programmer at 17, I was deciding whether I wanted to go down a scientific route, on a programming route, or more of a literary route. And it was a close call, I think, because I loved technology. I loved computers at the time, but I also loved to read and write, which is something I still Still do. I read,
Yeah.
I probably read about a book a week.
Right.
I'm a little bit of a bookworm. So, there's an alternate universe where I might be like a guy with glasses in some cottage somewhere in the country writing stories. There's interesting forks in life.
Yeah, but there's a way of thinking about, what you've become, a successful narrative game maker, of that was a symbiosis in a way, a synthesis of these two sides of yourself that you were maybe deciding between, right? And so you went down the programming route, but you found a way to become a narrative, creator in ways maybe that you didn't see when you were 17. You maybe thought you were leaving that behind forever, but here you are making narrative games, but combining that with programming, with technology, et cetera. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. I spent the first half of my career thinking I was not creative, and then I had like a mid-career crisis, deciding I wanted to be creative and I wanted to try it out. And that's the space I've actually found the most energy about. And when you and I started working together, I think that's one of the big topics that we were discussing.
That's right.
Finding at my scale or at my level a way to express myself or spend time in my schedule to do things that give me energy, so that I could then pour that energy back into our teams.
Yeah, I think that one of my early insights in just talking with you was that you weren't going to be happy unless you were doing something creative. And if you were just running a studio, that wasn't going to give you energy. That wasn't going to excite you. That wasn't going to keep you around, probably, right? So you might have gone off and done something else, maybe started a new studio. But everyone at Compulsion I know is glad that you didn't do that.
I'm also glad that I didn't do that.
Yeah. So what do you do to get away from the industry or get away from the day-to-day job, to refresh, to reinvigorate yourself? How do you think about that?
Well, one of the things that I do is I help other people in the industry.
Yeah.
That actually does help.
Does that help you? Does that make you feel better? Yeah.
I don't want to sound selfish about it, but like actually providing help where I can make a difference.
Yeah.
That actually does feel like one of the best ways for me to stay in good mental health. But yes, outside of work, my wife and I really like traveling. So we spend we do at least two trips a year, with one during Christmas and one in the summer. I've always wanted my children to experience the world a little bit like I did with my mother.
But you're not car camping.
No, we're not car camping. But we are seeing, it's really my son who now is 4, I think has been to 12 different countries,
wow.
like to Morocco, Japan, Peru. And to me, that is one of the number one things that really feeds me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I play the piano. I'm learning how to fly a plane. I think for me, like the thing that's important is if I am not learning something new, I feel like I'm rotting. Like I have to kind of just like, and I'm getting a little bit older. The reassurance that I can still keep learning things at a pace that I find satisfying is something that I find means that I'm not static. Like it means that
right.
the tomorrow me is going to be a different version of today me.
Yeah.
And hopefully a better, wiser version than I am today.
Absolutely. Well, our conversations, I hope, are marked by mutual learning. I know I always learn something new from you every time that we interact, as I have today. And I like to think that you draw some things out of me as well that are useful for you. But it's such a pleasure today to spend the time with you, Guillaume, as always. And I know the people who invest some time in listening to this interview are going to take a lot of great takeaways from it. So thank you.
No, thank you for having me. This has been great.